Stephen A. Smith just dropped a bombshell question that has the entire WNBA world losing its mind, and Indiana Fever fans do not have an answer. Sophie Cunningham bloodied on the floor, her own coach running past her. Now the receipts are out and it's ugly. The clothesline heard around the league. Let's set the scene because this one is wild. The United Center is rocking, the crowd is electric, Sky versus Fever, and then in one split second, total silence. Sophie Cunningham is streaking down the floor on a clean fast break, nobody within 10 feet of her. Out of nowhere, Dejonai Carrington closes in from behind, and instead of contesting the shot, she winds up and catches Cunningham across the head and neck. Cunningham crashes to the hardwood and somehow the layup still drops. Officials review it. It gets upgraded to a flagrant 2. Automatic ejection, no debate. The refs looked at the wind-up, the contact, and the follow-through and decided this crossed the line. That's league speak for this was not basketball. But the foul was only the opening act. Carrington's own home crowd started chanting Cunningham's name as she walked to the locker room. Cunningham got up furious, got in Carrington's face, and security had to separate both benches. Then Carrington hopped on social media and posted white privilege, tagging the Fever directly, and just like that, a hard foul turned into a full-blown national firestorm. Cunningham said flat out she believed the hit was intentional, while Carrington told reporters afterward she had no real issue with her. And this isn't Carrington's first rodeo, either. Rewind to the 2024 playoffs and she catches Caitlin Clark directly in the eye, leaving her with a black eye that got replayed for a week straight. Stack that on top of a flagrant on Skylar Diggins and a hit on Jessica Shepard, and fans aren't just seeing one bad night, they're seeing a pattern. Now here's where the plot twist kicks in, because the foul wasn't even the biggest headline of the night. The moment that sent Fever Nation into meltdown. While Cunningham was still down and bleeding, cameras caught something nobody could unsee. Head coach Stephanie White jogging straight past her own injured player to go check on Carrington first, on camera, in HD, from multiple broadcast angles. Once fans started freeze-framing it, there was no spinning it. Then White got to the podium, and instead of cooling things down, she poured gasoline on it. She told reporters she hadn't actually seen the play live, that she'd gone straight into her press conference, and that she'd assumed the call on the floor had been the right one. That's when Stephen A. Smith absolutely erupted, asking the question that's now everywhere. How is a head coach standing right on the sideline, actively coaching the game, somehow the one person in the building who didn't see the hit? Smith also pointed to an earlier incident where Cunningham got elbowed in the face, drew the foul call herself, and White didn't even stand up to argue the replay review. And the podium quote that lit the internet on fire? White told reporters Carrington was simply going to compete hard, that nobody was walking in for an easy layup against her, and that she didn't oppose the hard foul, though she didn't think Carrington had meant to catch Cunningham across the neck. No mention of Cunningham's health, no real concern voiced for her own player, just a full-throated defense of the woman who put her on the floor. That soundbite alone was enough to make this a full-blown scandal, but it's what happened next that turned it into a movement. Fans turn on their own coach, and so does the state of Indiana. The internet exploded. Gaslighting started trending among Fever fans because that's exactly what it felt like, watching your own coach defend the player who hurt your teammate live on national TV. Critics and analysts openly questioned why any coach would go out of her way to excuse the player who just hurt one of her own. At the very next home game, something almost unheard of happened. Fans booed their own head coach during introductions in her own building in front of her own players. And instead of walking it back, White doubled down, telling critics to go to hell during an emotional pregame moment about love and grace that did not land the way she hoped. It didn't stop at basketball either. This thing got so big that Indiana's own Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith publicly called for White to be let go, saying no real coach takes the side of the opposing player who committed a flagrant foul against her own team. When a sitting state official is weighing in on a WNBA sideline decision, you know this has officially left the arena. The backlash even got so loud that fake news started spreading. A viral post falsely claimed the Fever had fired White on the spot, tagging an emergency board meeting, and a new coach reveal, a claim multiple fact-checkers confirmed never actually happened. That's how out of control this story got. People were ready to believe anything at this point, but just when it looked like the story might cool off, it got a plot twist nobody saw coming. White fires back and Cunningham defends her own coach. Days later, White stood at the podium again, and this time she didn't take questions. Instead, she delivered a fiery, table-pounding statement blasting what she called the hate and divisiveness trying to hijack the league, insisting the Fever locker room was united and refusing to be pulled apart by outside noise. Her voice rose as she pounded the table, declaring the team would not be divided. And in a twist that shocked plenty of fans expecting a locker room mutiny, Cunningham herself stepped up to defend her coach directly, saying White simply hadn't seen the clip when she spoke, and giving Carrington her flowers as a great defender White had coached back in Connecticut. Fever leadership backed White too, with team president Kelly Krauskopf publicly stating she had the organization's full support and had kept the Fever focused and united under an unprecedented spotlight. Even Caitlin Clark reportedly stood behind her coach through the storm. So is this scandal actually cooling off, or is it just the calm before an even bigger storm? Because the deeper history here is where things get really interesting. The Connecticut connection nobody was talking about. Here's the piece of the puzzle Stephen A. Smith zeroed in on, and it changes everything. This isn't the first time White has ended up defending a player who hurt Caitlin Clark. Earlier this season, Alyssa Thomas drove a closed fist into Clark's throat in live play, no ball anywhere near it. It wasn't flagged live, and it triggered its own outrage cycle. At first, White sounded furious, calling the reaction absolutely unacceptable. But within about a week, her tone flipped completely from defending Clark to criticizing the toxicity of the conversation swirling around it. Now, line up her words on Thomas back then with her words on Carrington now. It's almost word for word, praising the physicality, insisting nothing was intentional, calling it just hard, competitive basketball. Swap the names and you genuinely cannot tell which incident she's talking about. And that's not a coincidence. It traces straight back to Connecticut. White coached both Alyssa Thomas and Dijonai Carrington for 2 seasons with the Connecticut Sun from 2023 through 2024, going an eye-popping 55-23 and winning WNBA Coach of the Year in the process, a run built largely on exactly the kind of physical, in-your-face defense Carrington became known for. In other words, White didn't just witness that identity from across the court. She built it, play by play, practice by practice, years before she ever wore a Fever jacket. Throw in Dana Bonner and Marina Mabry, both from that same Connecticut system, and suddenly the list of hard fouls absorbed by Clark and the Fever this season starts looking a lot less random. That's the exact thread Stephen A. Smith pulled on. His real point wasn't just the coach missed a play, it was that her defense of Carrington sounded rehearsed, because in some sense it was. The same script, recycled for a nearly identical situation, rooted in a coaching identity she spent years building before she ever coached in Indiana. So, with all of that laid bare, where does this actually leave the Fever heading into the postseason? What's actually on the line heading into the playoffs? Here's the reality. The drama hasn't derailed the season. The Fever have officially clinched their spot in the 2026 WNBA playoffs, and White is coaching a roster loaded with MVP caliber talent. Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, and Cunningham herself, a group that's already proven it can win ugly and win big. Fever leadership has made it clear, publicly and repeatedly, that White isn't going anywhere, but the questions Stephen A. Smith raised aren't going away just because the wins keep coming. Every time this roster takes the floor now, fans are watching a little closer, wondering exactly whose side their coach is really on when things get physical. And with a championship window this wide open, Indiana genuinely cannot afford any more sideline confusion heading into a playoff run this important. So that's the full jaw-dropping story, a brutal foul, a coach who checked on the wrong player first, a lieutenant governor jumping into a WNBA scandal, and a Connecticut connection that changes how you see the whole thing. Does Stephanie White deserve to keep coaching this roster into the playoffs, or is this pattern too big to ignore? Let us know in the comments below, smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because this story is far from over.